How do I determine what type of exception occurred? Some underscore function raises an exception while executing, so the program jumps to the except. How do I see what caused the exception to occur?
You usually should not catch all possible exceptions with try column ... except as this is overly broad. Just catch those that are expected to happen for whatever reason. If you really must. For example, if you want to find out more about some problem while debugging, you should do
The other answers all point out that you should not catch generic exceptions, but no one seems to want to tell you why, which is essential to understanding when you can break the rule. Here is an explanation. Basically, it's so that you don't hide the fact that an error occurred, the specifics of the error that occurred, error hiding anti-pattern. So as long as you take care to do none of those things, it's okay to catch the generic exception. For instance, you could provide information about the exception to the user another way, like present exceptions as dialogues in a GUI. Transfer exceptions from a worker thread or process to the controlling thread or process in a multithreading or multiprocessing application. So how to catch the generic exception? There are several ways. If you just want the exception object, do it like this. Make sure message is brought to the attention of the user in a hard-to-miss way. Printing it, as shown above, may not be enough if the message is buried in lots of other messages. Failing to get the user's attention is tantamount to swallowing all exceptions, and if there's one impression you should have come away with after reading the answers on this page, it's that this is not a good thing. Ending the except block with a raise statement will remedy the problem by transparently re-raising the exception that was caught. The difference between the above and using just except column without any argument is twofold. A bare except column doesn't give you the exception object to inspect. The exception system exit, keyboard interrupt and generator exit aren't caught by the above code, which is generally what you want. See the exception hierarchy. If you also want the same stack trace you get if you do not catch the exception, you can get that like this, still inside the except clause. If you use the logging module, you can print the exception to the log, along with a message, like this. If you want to dig deeper and examine the stack, look at variables etc., use the post_mortem function of the PDB module inside the except block. I found this last method to be invaluable when hunting down bugs.
Get the name of the class that exception object belongs. And using print_xc, function will also print stack trace, which is essential info for any error message, like this. You will get output like this. And after print and analysis, the code can decide not to handle exception and just execute raise. Output. And interpreter prints exception. After raise, original exception continues to propagate further up the call stack. Beware of possible pitfall. If you raise new exception, it carries new shorter stack trace. Output. Notice how traceback does not include calculate function from line 9, which is the origin of original exception E.
Most answers point to except as column syntax, rightly so, but at the same time nobody wants to talk about an elephant in the room, where the elephant is sys.exe_info function. From the documentation of sys module, emphasis mine. This function returns a tuple of 3 values that give information about the exception that is currently being handled. If no exception is being handled anywhere on the stack, a tuple containing 3 none values is returned. Otherwise, the values returned are type, value, traceback. Their meaning is, type gets the type of the exception being handled, a subclass of base exception, value gets the exception instance, an instance of the exception type, traceback gets a traceback object. See the reference manual, which encapsulates the call stack at the point where the exception originally occurred. I think the sys.exe_info could be treated as the most direct answer to the original question of how do I know what type of exception occurred.
If you want to support the channel, please consider liking and subscribing.